Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. We're here right after a chaotic Grand Nationals. We saw record high scoring. What I believe to be the second highest scoring show of all time. Flower Mound, I also believe, is in that 5 to 7 range. Absolutely wild stuff. We saw a absolute fight for that 12 spot. We saw risers, we saw fallers, and we're going to go over some of the scoring today with this lovely document right here. Huge thank you to Plux for making this document and letting me use it for the video. Awesome stuff to be able to not only make this document really easy to use and as quickly as he did, but also for giving people access to it. Again, huge thank you. All of this information will be in the description if you want to check it out. And it's also over on HornRank in the forums where he posted it. But again, thank you very much for that. And without further ado, let's get into the scoring. One of the first things I want to point out here is just how ridiculously inconsistent the scoring was this year. We saw Bentonville go from finishing 5th in prelims to 10th and then to 12th, which personally, if you get into Bentonville's scores in finals, it really makes no sense. We see in general effect visual, Bentonville is second last. It doesn't make any sense. When you look at their show is one of the most well-designed visual shows, right? The uniform use is absolutely brilliant for the show, and I just don't get it. Maybe I need to do a video going over, what these captions actually mean, looking into really what you see on a score sheet, but man, if Bentonville didn't have good general effect visual, I don't know what the caption means. And we see this reflected in prelims as well, right? In the caption, Bentonville came in 9th. Wow. Tied for 8th, which isn't exactly where I thought they were, but it's a big improvement over where they actually were. And then in general effect total, they came in 6th, as you'll see right here. Flip-flopping is really odd to me. And I understand general effect is subjective, but it's not even like this is performance-based, right? General effect, there's only one or two things that factor into general effect, supposedly, that are performance-based. Most of the caption is based on design, which does not change performance to performance. So I really don't get how that could be that inconsistent, but it is. And another thing to point out, which ended up being very impactful, is the bubble race, right? We saw one spot up for grabs between Wando, Dobbins-Bennett, Fishers, Castle, Brownsburg, and the surprising one competing for that spot, Bartlett. And in prelims, we saw out of all of those bands, Dobbins-Bennett was the one that led. And this was mostly due to the fact that they led in GE. And they led comfortably, right? They led by an entire point and some change. And this was not the only thing they led over everybody else. They led visual as well. Tied with Brownsburg, close with Homestead, but they led in visual. Wando did take music in this run, but they were up almost an entire point over Wando. Then in semis, we see them drop 3 points. And when you look at it side by side, this is all due to the general effect music, where we see Dobbins-Bennett go down to 14th. As well as general effect visual, where they also drop. If Dobbins-Bennett had the same lead in that one judge's eyes as they did in prelims, they make finals, Wando goes home. But that point drop for Dobbins-Bennett, 54-2 going to 53-2, is an entire point, which would have made up the difference between them and Wando, but it was not meant to be. Also, to mention for Wando, you could make the argument that the only reason they were behind Dobbins-Bennett in prelims is because they got absolutely nuked in general effect visual, where we see they finished 22nd behind Center Grove, Jennison, all of the bubble bands, Arlington, right? We saw that clearly the general effect judge was not impressed with their show, and we saw that absolutely 180, going from a 17.5 all the way to an 18, which doesn't sound like a lot, but remember, that is 20% of your score. That is a 0.5 jump, which really puts it into perspective how much influence these general effect judges have. And I'm not sure that that's the right way to go. Now, we will get into that argument later, but let's move on right now. To another odd band scoring wise that we saw, Marcus. Marcus is one of the most interesting splits I think I've ever seen doing score analysis here. We see them absolutely dominate individual music, the music caption judged by the judge on the field. We see them fourth place in prelims, first place in semifinals, and first place in finals. And speaking about finals, we almost had another big tie, 3 ways in finals. We did see a tie, but not 3 ways. Marcus almost equals out Flower Mound and Carmel for that caption, just 0.025 off. But the thing that really sticks out to me about Marcus is this great scoring in music does not transition at all to general effect. We see them get 7th in finals in GE music, 2 entire points behind Avon, which I don't understand. And it's not like it was always like that in prelims. They come in 4th in general effect music and also score really highly in general effect visual as well, coming in at a comfortable 5th. Even though the show didn't change at all, Marcus goes from 4th in GE in prelims to then having it be their detriment in finals. I think we just need more clarification on what is general effect, because it's not objective at all. And so it raises the question, at what point do we start to maybe look to compromise? Maybe look at a 30-30-40 scoring system, because clearly 20-20-60 isn't working, and that isn't really balanced either. And also, at what point do we start to look at having 2 GE judges for visual? Instead of just having 2 for music and 1 for visual, why don't we move into a 30-30-40 with 2 GE visual judges and 2 music judges? That way we can get a more balanced score. Personally, I think that's the way to go. I think that's a pretty easy fix as well. I think a big reason why they haven't is because it kind of calls into question other shows in the past, right? We might start comparing and contrasting who might have won in certain years with that scoring system, and it can cause a little bit of backlash. But again, I just feel like it would be better for the activity if we had more, if not only we had more clarification on what GE was, but it wasn't so impactful to us. But again, that's just my opinion. Now let's move on to one of the more underrated storylines, and that was the fight for 3rd place. This is another one where we just have crazy inconsistencies throughout the entire week in prelims. Everything other than GE, so music and visual combined. We see Broken Arrow beat Carmel by 0.1 points, which means Carmel ends up making up that difference in GE to end up just edging out Broken Arrow by 0.5 points. Now we move on to semis, where instead of Broken Arrow winning in music and visual, we now see Carmel domination, winning both captions relatively handily, and they end up sweeping Broken Arrow, winning GE and music and visual combined by a score of 0.425. Now we move on to finals, where it gets wild. In finals, we see Broken Arrow dominate in general effect. Broken Arrow beats Carmel by 0.6, which should just lock up the competition right there between those two. But no, we see Carmel go from losing those 2 captions to then going in and beating them by not enough to overtake that GE score, to then dominating to a ridiculous extent. Carmel ends up beating Broken Arrow in music and visual combined by 0.85. It just makes no sense. Now, am I complaining about the result of Carmel finishing above Broken Arrow? No. Personally, I completely understand Carmel being above Broken Arrow in music and visual, but that much above is ridiculous, frankly. Now moving on to what everybody's talking about. First place between Flower Mound and Avon. The thing that's just weird to me about this is the lack of consistency. In prelims, we see Flower Mound beat Avon in general effect very handily. It's not like they were on different panels. They were both on panel 1. It's just that Flower Mound absolutely stomps Avon in general effect by a whopping 0.6. They end up narrowly defeating them in music and narrowly losing in visual, meaning Flower Mound ended up winning prelims. Then we move on to semis, where Flower Mound goes from a 58.3 to a 58.1, and Avon goes from a 57.7 to a 58.5, which is a 0.8 increase compared to a 0.2 decrease, which to those that are good in math, that is a 1 point difference. And that jump between prelims to semis is the story of this event, right? We see that exact jump stick in finals, and it even gets greater to a 58.75. Flower Mound also gets up there, but it's not enough to overturn it. And in the end, that is the competition. And I don't need to beat a dead horse, but how is Avon above Flower Mound in general effect music by so much, while they're also above Avon in total music? And pretty handily above them in music ensemble, which is also from the box. And yet the GE judges don't see it the same way. Now, I know it's a different caption. I know that the GE judges are judging it based on the book, based on the design of the music, but I don't know. And we've seen this caption be so weird in other seasons. The best example I can think of is shows that I attended live, Hebron 2023 versus Blue Springs 2023, where Blue Springs somehow won in Music GE. I mean, this score doesn't even make sense. So it makes me question, what are we really scoring? I don't know. It definitely raises some questions from me, and I would want more transparency on what these captions mean, but I don't really want to make drastic changes like some people are suggesting. I'm open to a change in how we score, but I'm not open into changing where we score. I've seen some suggestions of moving around Grand Nats. I hate that idea, and I don't think I could be more outspoken against that if I really even wanted to. If we change the location of Grand Nats each year, and we have every other year in Texas or every other year in a different location, then it would be more fair money-wise and budget-wise, but it also would take away from the competition. We would never see Flower Mound versus Avon again if we saw alternating years of Grand Nats. BOA San Antonio would just be labeled as Grand Nats then. And so I don't want to take away from the competition aspect. This is what we love about band. We want to see these bands compete. We want to be able to see the best of the best go head to head and then come together at the end. But we would never get to see that, which personally I think that would be a big miss. And not even to mention how that would be terribly impactful logistically. Overall, I don't really think there's an easy fix. I do think that there is probably some correlation between the band directors that have networked with the judges and the ones that haven't. Personally, I marched Wando. We had met some of our judges for our local event. We paid them to fly down. I got to meet Michael Turner. I got to meet Richard Saucedo, and both of them are judges that judge Grand Nationals. And for a Texas band that maybe don't have access to that Indiana pipeline, going into Indiana with these judges that do have pipelines, that have seen Carmel and Avon both locally, have maybe even gave them some pointers during the year, that is a pretty big disadvantage. And I do completely understand where people are coming from pointing that out. I just don't really see an easy fix for that. And the fix is certainly not to move where Grand Nats is. Lucas Oil Stadium is the perfect place for Grand Nats. I just think we do need to be careful what we are asking for as a community. And also, I think we need to be more calm. I've been seeing a lot of comments over the week saying that this is a brutal robbery and kind of making personal insults towards both the band programs and the judges, and there's just kind of no need for that. Judging is subjective. It's always going to be subjective. It will never be more objective. And I understand people are upset, right? They wanted to see the show that they believe to be the rightful winner win, and I get where they're coming from. That being said, I think this Avon show was still very, very, very great. It was definitely top tier, really clean, really sound. There were no holes in this show. And while I might have had Flower Mound winning, it doesn't really change the fact that this Avon show was still really, really good. And I think we need to be taking away more positive things. This was still an amazing year for Grand Nats and BOA in general. If you're going to direct your anger anywhere, please have it be at box 5. I'm not going to say that. That can't go in the video. Either way, I think that was a lot of fun to go over those scores. Again, huge thank you to Plux for letting me use that. Make sure to go check it out in the description. And rankings will be tomorrow. That'll be it for me.